Perfect. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It is 1:02 and we can now get started. I can confirm that we do have quorum. Absent currently is Councillor Neal, Maxine Bridges, Dina Coder, Penny Leclerc, Susan Mockler, Corey Scott, Nicholas Tolgesi. From staff, we have Jennifer Campbell, Director of Heritage Services, Janet James, the Deputy City Clerk, Colin Wilkington, Director, Arts and Culture Services, Derek O'Shea, the Acting Deputy City Clerk, is our meeting host today, and I am Ian Sullivan, the Committee Clerk. There are currently no members in the public gallery, and with that, I am happy to turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Fantastic. So I will call this meeting to order before somebody sneaks out and we're in trouble. So we'll get going with, let me see here. Excuse me, I've got 3 computers on my desk and I'm fumbling a little bit. So we'll start with the approval of the agenda. Hopefully everyone is taking a peek at the agenda that was sent out. Yeah, sorry, Ian.
Make sure that includes the addendum that was sent out earlier today as well, please.
As well, yes. And addendum was sent out today. Item ATAF number 7, I believe, was sent out. So including that, can I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda and the addendum? And I see Janice, and we'll go with Kate, a seconder. All in favor? Anyone on the phone can verbally say yay or nay as well. Okay, it looks like that passed. So moving on, confirmation of the minutes of March 3rd, 2022. Hopefully those of us who are present took a look at those. Were there any issues with the minutes from the March meeting? Seeing none, hearing none. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the minutes? I see Glenn's hand up. I see William's hand up for a seconder. All those in favor? Great, looks like that passed. Item number 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any of interest that someone would like to declare? Hearing none, seeing none, we're going to move on. Item 5, delegations. Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 6A in briefings. So this is Jennifer Campbell and Colin Wilkington. Jennifer is the Director of Heritage Services, and Colin is the Director of Arts and Cultural Services. Here to speak to us today, giving us the annual accessibility update for their services. So please take it away. The floor is yours.
Jen, do you want me to start?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Colin.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Andrew. My name is Colin Wilkington. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture Services, as was mentioned. I identify with the pronouns he, him, and I'm joining you today from my workspace, but I'm using a virtual background showing Kingston City Hall and the City of Kingston logo. I'm a middle-aged white cisgender male with brown graying hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a headset just so you can have a sense of what I look like. Jen, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. I'm Jennifer Campbell. I'm the Director of Heritage Services, and I'm also joining you from my office. So similar to Colin, I have a background that has City Hall featured in it, as well as the city logo. I'm a cisgendered white woman. I'd like to say middle-aged and dark hair, but we'll leave it there for now. I'm going to turn it back over to Colin. We will be sort of ping-ponging a little bit back and forth today throughout the presentation. So happy to be here, and thanks.
Thanks, Jen. And it's nice to meet you, Andrew, sort of in person. So Andrew and I were featured last week on the Tell Me More podcast produced by the City of Kingston, and had the opportunity to speak about the upcoming multi-year accessibility plan. And I just wanted to mention that because hopefully if you've had a chance to listen to the podcast, you've heard a little bit more in depth about some of the work that we've been doing related to accessibility through our department, Arts and Culture Services, but happy to meet with the committee today to provide our annual update. And as Jen has mentioned, we will be shifting back and forth between her and I. If you've had a chance to read the update report from us, we did in 2021 have a shift in the organizational structure. So what was cultural services became two different departments. So Arts and Culture Services led by me and Heritage Services led by Jen Campbell. And we felt that it was important at this juncture, since we're still working on the 2018 to 2022 multi-year accessibility plan, that we would continue to meet with the committee jointly to present our work. So as you read through the report that has been provided, you see it very much integrates our two departments. But today we're going to highlight some of the newer initiatives that maybe some of these committee members haven't heard about. So there are recurring efforts on the parts of our two departments that are explained in more depth in the report, but for the sake of time, we wanted to highlight some key things. If I could have the next slide, please. So in terms of Arts and Culture Services and the section of the multi-year accessibility plan that deals with customer service, I wanted to highlight a new initiative that we're working on, which is the development of a creative industry strategy. This is the first time that the City of Kingston has come forward with this kind of strategic plan, and it's something that was endorsed by Council back in April 2021. And the reason that I wanted to highlight this today as part of our presentation is that there is 6 pillars in this Creative Industries plan that include 15 recommendations, but one of the pillars is focused on this notion of reinforced diversity and inclusion. And while we pursue this work that's really focused on helping to develop the film, music, and theater sectors in Kingston, we wanted to pay particular attention to how those sectors involve a greater diversity of Kingston residents and Kingston artists and creatives. And so we've made a very intentional effort to make this a key theme in this work that we're pursuing. And while it's just getting underway, everything that we're pursuing, we're looking at it through a lens of trying to make sure that the work the city is supporting champions the need for gender equity within these sectors, but also that the work we're doing is creating space for and supporting a variety of creatives that include artists with mixed abilities, Indigenous artists, artists of color, as well as members of the 2S LGBTQ+ communities and others. So just wanted to share with this committee that that's very much an important driver in relation to this work, and it's something that we'll look forward to reporting back on as this plan moves forward. It is a 5 to 10 year strategy, so you'll see over time different aspects of this coming forward and being shared. Next slide, please. This is information about discount programs related to customer service that we've shared with the committee in the past. The one thing I did want to highlight that was new in 2022 is the introduction of an artist and arts worker discount program in relation to the Grand on Stage program that we offer through the Grand Theatre. This was a need that we identified as a result of the pandemic. Certainly artists, as with many gig economy workers, saw a real impact on their income as a result of the pandemic. So we wanted to create a new category in terms of discount programs that encourages artists and creatives to participate in the programming that we're offering through Grand on Stage. And that's in addition to all the other efforts that you see highlighted here. Next slide, please. The pandemic has been both a challenge and an opportunity. Obviously we had to shift the way we do work, and we certainly turned to a lot of virtual programming in relation to the Grand Theatre and arts programming. And one of the sort of benefits of that is that it has expanded our ability to improve accessibility. So you don't necessarily have to come to a facility like the Grand Theater to participate in the programming that's offered. And we also were able to secure funding as a result of the pandemic to equip the Grand Theater with streaming equipment. So we now have the ability to do in-person performances, online performances, and hybrid performances. So the Grand on Stage program did shift to a virtual presentation mode through the pandemic, and we are moving back to in-person presentations in the fall of 2022, but we also have the ability to do hybrid presentations as well. We use that kind of platform for the Mayor's Arts Awards, which is an annual program. And as in past years, there was an ability to provide closed captioning with that event as a way to foster accessibility. And we've also used these kinds of digital tools available to us to expand the kinds of offerings that we have. So we also created a digital community art series, which involved emerging artists partnering with some of our long-term care homes in Kingston to give them exposure to performing artists that was delivered digitally. And we also, one of the most exciting initiatives is the launch of a local arts residency program at the Grand Theater. And this is us using our resources to invest in the creation of new work led by artists of different disciplines, particularly music, dance, first and foremost. And a great initiative that came out of that, there was 9 residencies that we host, and it was a competitive process. People had to submit applications that were assessed. But one of the people who was selected was Erin Ball. And I spoke about this in the podcast. She has an organization called Kingston Circus Arts. And if you're familiar with Erin Ball, she's a circus artist who lost her lower limbs due to an accident, and yet she hasn't let that stop her in terms of the pursuit of her art. And through the local arts residency program, she actually worked with a specialist in described performance as well as a musician. And over the course of the week, she devised a performance piece that saw her doing her aerial acrobatics, along with a musician who was singing lyrics that were actually essentially a description of the performance so that it would be accessible to people in a multiple of ways. And a really exciting evolution of how accessibility can be integrated into performance and presentation in a way that doesn't separate it out as something that's layered on top, that is very much a part of the piece. So lots of activity around arts programming and always trying to find ways to improve accessibility. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Colin. I'm going to jump in now and take a couple slides. So kind of leading from where Colin was just describing in terms of, how the opportunities that were provided actually over the course of the pandemic, not dissimilar to what you have seen in the theater and in the arts and culture group. We've had opportunity with the museums at the city to start to think about, and within the heritage sector more broadly, new paths to inclusion. And certainly revisioning the ways that people have been able to experience our bricks and mortar sites, as well as experiencing those sites through online presentations and the like. This is something we were already investing in, creating online visits, the possibilities of virtual reality models, also updating our websites to support accessibility and planning for visits, particularly at the Pump House Museum, which you may know is a heritage location in its own regard, and does present some barriers to accessibility in terms of a barrier-free access. And so we've been working very carefully to try to help people have opportunity to plan for their visits and opportunities and ways to engage with staff prior to arriving at the site to help to make sure that we can support and facilitate those visits in whichever way is most appropriate. We've also been supporting through the City of Kingston Heritage Fund the development of accessible linguistic programming at various sites across the city. A target of the fund in the last round of the grant was actually looking for sites who are interested in exploring creating bilingual exhibitions. And the intent over the next several years is to annually select specific targeted improvement opportunities in the local sector, and then supporting some of those additional organizations to update their programs, their sites, to increase their accessibility and their reach and people's capacity to come out and see them. And certainly at our own sites, we're also focused very much on alternate format deliveries. And again, just being as responsive as we possibly can. I think that the pandemic has afforded us an opportunity because we've had smaller groups in our sites. We've actually been able to do a lot of deep listening and learning from the groups that have been able to come in and seeing people who are interested in taking in the sites in a different style or format than we might have traditionally been offering. So really, again, that sort of mixed opportunity, the impacts of the pandemic, negative as they have been, have also afforded us some important time and space to engage with residents and community members, I think to everyone's success. Next slide, please. Just a couple of things I wanted to highlight in some more detail that are drawn from the overall updates in the report. The first is our continued use of technology, particularly at Kingston City Hall, to create alternate opportunities for people to access the building. There are sites within the building that you cannot visit. The cupola is one that people often want to see, and it's not accessible to anyone. And so by creating a virtual model of the site and tailoring and tweaking it over the course of the last several years, I think we've really been able to allow people to come and see the site in person or to see it from their homes or to mix the two together and to enhance their visits. And now we're working on how this model can be further updated. It's not currently offered in both languages. There are not as many opportunities for linguistic choice between the offerings. Some of the enhanced description of the images is not where we would like it to be. So now that we have an operating system, we're looking at ways that we can continue to improve it so that it is going to work for as many people as possible. We're also working with the Heritage Resource Center, which is located within Kingston City Hall. There is plan right now to add an exterior ramp to the rear door, which would enter into the market space at City Hall, if you're familiar. And that will be an important aspect of increasing its accessibility into the building itself. But it will also allow for increased access to the market wing cultural space, where we are doing a lot more interpretation and presentation of both local history and heritage, but also arts exhibitions and the like. The other aspect with our new department is we've had opportunity to also remodel how we offer our heritage services more broadly. These used to be very much modeled on a approach where people needed to come into City Hall to sit down to meet with planners. And we have now over the last year been working very carefully to make sure that all of our opportunities are available remotely through ultimate formats of delivery and moving site visits out to people as opposed to requesting that they come to City Hall. And so all of this, again, is meant to remove as many barriers as we possibly can to the information and the support and the services that we're offering at City Hall. Finally, as part of our work within the building, our planning portfolio, if you will, within the heritage buildings of the City of Kingston, we've also identified and started to look through our policies and where heritage policies for building maintenance, repair, alteration, et cetera, and how those policies need to be updated to better reflect and support accessibility standards, guidelines, and expectations of community and residents. So this is a bit of a work emerging, and we're certainly advocating to include this in the next round of the planning of the work plan around accessibility of the city. But it's an area we're very aware of and very committed to, that the conservation, restoration, and use of historic period buildings, very important in Kingston, but also something that benefits strongly from a consideration of accessibility and universal access and design principles. Next slide, please. And just one final aspect from the heritage portfolio that I wanted to note and draw out is a recent partnership to use the building at 610 Montreal Street by a local community organization called Kingston Indigenous Languages Nest. And we bring this forward. It is a city-owned building being made available for this community use, and it's a wonderful opportunity in and of its own self. And in Indigenous language revitalization, cultural support, and land use is certainly a focus here. But what I wanted to share with this committee today is also the fact that we are looking and have made an application to receive funding with the intent of improving accessibility to this site. There is currently no accessible way to access the second floor. The washroom also requires updating. And so we are looking to pursue a grant that will allow us to start to move this building into an even more accessible format Even though it is being used right now by a third-party organization in partnership, we certainly want to support them to have the most accessible location they can possibly have for community use. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass it back over to Colin now.
Thanks, Jen. And the remaining few slides are focused on the work of Arts and Culture Services, but as previously said, the report certainly provides more balanced information between our two departments. But I did want to highlight that 2021 was a remarkable year for our public art program. We had a number of projects come to fruition, 3 permanent new public art projects that were installed, all 3 of which were supported by the project team associated with this committee, because of course, when we do these public art installations, they always do have to align with Ontario Building Code as well as FAS design standards. So they are all accessible to the public to the best of our ability. Next slide, please. So if you haven't had a chance to see them, just some 3 images here of these 3 permanent works that came online. Horse and Cart, created by artist Nicholas Kronbach, that is in Victoria Park. The Wilds of Kingston, which is actually a 2-piece installation. So there's one figure just under life size of somewhat androgynous figure with a pigeon head, and then the other figure is one with a squirrel head. And that's located at the intersection of Princess and Division Street. And Manadoo Agitigan, which is an amazing project we've been able to develop in collaboration and partnership with the Alderville First Nation. That's at Lake Ontario Park and is created by the artist Terrence Radford. At each one of those locations, we've also created signage that has been developed again with the input of the project team from this committee to ensure it has accessibility in terms of access, but also legibility. Next slide, please. I also wanted to mention that in terms of enhancements to the built environment, anytime we're doing some work associated with the Grand Theatre, we always try to improve how accessibility is functioning. And through the pandemic, we were able to develop a brand refresh for the Grand Theatre. So that's the graphic you see here that says welcoming, dynamic, engaging, and entertaining. But because we were doing a refresh to the brand, we also took the opportunity to do some interior refreshes to the public-facing parts of the building. So we worked with our colleagues in construction services to repaint the building with a lighter color to improve the lighting, particularly in the main lobby area for the purposes of visibility. And we also replaced the carpet. So we were able to use that as an opportunity to create a stronger contrast between the floor and walls and to replace the tangible strips at the top of the staircases. I don't think I have the right terminology there, I apologize, but the raised relief that tells you that you're coming to a staircase. And also we've been able to improve the nosing on the stairs coming down. So hopefully that makes the visitor experience a little bit more comfortable. Next slide, please. The last couple of things I wanted to just address quickly are holdovers. You've heard us speak about these year after year. These came from a council-directed motion that asked what was then Cultural Services to look at the removal of specific barriers. And we were able to address all of the things that came forward at that time, except for these last couple of pieces that have gotten delayed for a variety of reasons, but have now been moving forward. One is related to the City of Kingston Arts Fund and doing work to make that more accessible. And by that, I mean accessible to artists and organizations that want to apply. And certainly we're tracking best practices with other grant programs through municipalities, the province, and the federal government that are creating mechanisms to support people who may not be as readily able to fill out incredibly complex bureaucratic application forms. So looking at ways that we might be able to receive oral submissions coming from potentially Indigenous artists who come from an oral tradition, which is a practice that the province and the federal government has been developing, but also looking at how we can support people who have visual impairment or issues around cognition or have neurodiverse situations that they're dealing with. So we want to make sure that the kind of funding the city is making available is accessible to everyone. So in 2022, we will be launching a full review of the City of Kingston Arts Fund that addresses a number of issues, including accessibility. The final piece I just wanted to talk about quickly today, if you can go to the next slide, is a longstanding project that we've been working on to address accessibility issues related to the performance spaces at the Grand Theatre. Over the years, we've done a tremendous amount of work on the public-facing parts of the building, but the performance areas have always had very challenging constraints because of the fact the building is a 19th century construction and it sits on a very finite and tight footprint. So we did, through an RFP process, engage a firm called Plus VG Architects, who brought in a subcontractor called Designable Environments, who are specialists in accessibility. And we went through a very protracted process of analyzing the building, the backstage areas and the performance areas themselves, and exploring a number of conceptual plans. And they were tasked with coming up with some temporary solutions that could be explored, as well as some longer term solutions. And I just wanted to highlight, for the benefit of the committee today, that the result of this exercise has been challenging in that there isn't a lot that we're able to do with the building without tremendous sort of engineering efforts and expense. So what we're looking at in the short term for consideration is a reconfiguration of one of the washrooms adjacent to the Baby Grand Theatre to make it an accessible dressing room. And the other option that we're looking at is the possibility of a movable trailer that could be brought in adjacent to the Regina Rosen Auditorium, but that also creates a number of issues around that back laneway and the right-of-way access and those kinds of issues. So we are going to be delving into those more and considering including them as part of our capital planning. And would certainly, if we're able to move forward with either one of those projects, would be engaging this committee through the creation of a project team. And final slide, please. So in terms of future solutions, and this slide includes a satellite shot of the Grand Theatre, just showing it in its sort of location, which is somewhat landlocked because of the adjacency of other buildings and the town parking garage. It will be incredibly difficult to go up or out to expand the footprint to improve accessibility, but we also asked the architects to look at, a longer term option, which would be, what if, if we wanted a fully accessible civic auditorium, what would that mean in terms of footprint? And right now, the Grand Theatre itself is 28,000 square feet, and in order to meet current code, we would need a building that's as large as 40 to 45,000 square feet at a cost pre sort of pandemic of about 55 to $70 million. So, we looked at a range of possibilities because we wanted to see what might be possible. But in the short term, we'll just be looking at those two initial proposals around the washroom reconfiguration and the possibility of a movable trailer. So again, we'll be circling back with this committee if those projects are able to move forward. And I believe that's the last slide that just goes to questions and discussions, which I guess will come up as part of the business of the meeting agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you for that presentation. Wow, that was a lot of work and initiatives over the past year. Thank you for that. And a reminder to members that the presentation, the slide deck was sent out to us a few earlier this morning, so we could go refer back to it too if necessary. But yeah, I'll open the floor up. Are there any questions or comments for Jennifer or Colin? Chantel, I see your hand up. Go ahead. Sorry, I think you're on mute. There you go.
When I was growing up, my mother, she was on the British Columbia Coalition for Persons with Disabilities. And one of the things that they did was help make Vancouver one of the most accessible cities in British Columbia back in I was young, it was probably the 80s, late 80s. And just taking a look at some of the things you've presented, and dealing with my mother's accessibility issues. Like, she's in a wheelchair a lot of the time. I really like what you've done, and I think it's really great for the community, and I'm really supportive of the initiatives, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing no more hands up. Thank you very much, Jennifer and Colin. That was, as always, a wonderful presentation, and congratulations on all the work that's been done. So please pass that along to your teams, and we, as always, look forward to seeing you again and hearing more what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So now we're moving on to, in our agenda, item number 7, business 7A, which is the 2021 accessibility plan update. Janet, is that you?
That is actually me now, Andrew. So just to get the committee up to speed, at this current time, Janet is seconded to the election office organizing the 2022 municipal election. So I have been moved over to the role of acting deputy city clerk. So I will be fulfilling the accessibility role as well. So I'll give you a quick update on the report, or an overview on the report. As you know, this is the annual update to the city's multi-year accessibility plan. It provides an overview of the work done by the city in the year 2021 to improve accessibility and remove barriers. The city is currently in the second last year of the multi-year plan. It ends at the end of this year, 2022. So 2 big highlights of this report, outside of the individual accessibility items that are included, is 2021, the city established its Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, as well as hired our EDI office manager, Mohammed Hassan, who gave a presentation at the March meeting of the committee. So that is a big focus of the update, is the city's work in that area and its crossover with the world of accessibility, and how our 2 groups, Mohammed's with EDI and Janet and I's in the area of accessibility, will work together moving forward. And the other aspect that's been unavoidable the last 2 years is the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, I believe we lived through at least 3 waves of the pandemic. So that's, of course, another focus, is that the city did have to create a lot of adaptations and changes to programs and services to accommodate the various shutdowns that had happened and the various public health measures. So as mentioned in the report, though, it did provide a good opportunity to look at providing service models in a different method on a permanent basis that makes services and programs for Kingston residents more accessible across the board. So with that, the request with this report is that the committee approve the report as it's been received, and forward the report on to council for its approval. And once approved by council, will be posted on the city website. And this is part of the requirements under the AODA. And with that, Andrew, I'm happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback on the report.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Derek. So yes, any questions for Derek? Seeing none and hearing none, we do have a recommendation that the 2021 Accessibility Plan Update Report attached as Exhibit A to report NAC-22-05 be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder? I saw Amy's hand and David. All in favor? Okay, that passes. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to 7B, the Accessibility Office Report for Q1 2022. Derek, I think you're up again.
I am happy to be back, Andrew. So I'll provide a quick overview of the report as well. So in Q1 2022, there were 93 inquiries received. Looking at the average for the quarter over the last 4 years, on that average, there were 78 inquiries received over that 4-year average. So there is an increase in inquiries related to accessibility in that time. Looking more specifically at the categories, the largest categories, the largest number of inquiries were related to roads and sidewalk and parking. So the parking was consistent with previous 4 years for the quarter. Roads and sidewalks did see an increase. And I know we're now in June and rather warm weather, but I believe the reason for the increase was a couple of winter storm events that did happen late in Q1 this year. So in looking at the statistics, it doesn't appear there's any trends in terms of inquiries outside of the norm of the past 4 years. Also included in the report are some sample work orders that were received. They've been anonymized, obviously for people's privacy, but this was a request, I believe, at a previous committee meetings, was to see some samples of what are the types of inquiries people are making. And you can see there's a balance of suggestions for improvements, a balance of requests for enforcement of regulations related to accessibility, and then some are just information requests. So not seeing any real changes to long-term trends there. In terms of other items the Accessibility Office has coming up or had happened in Q1, work was done on the creation of the draft multi-year accessibility plan for 2023 to 2025. And a chance to give a quick update. Yesterday, the first draft of the plan went live on the city's Get Involved Kingston website. So this draft has taken into account feedback received from an engagement back in March of this year, as well as staff working with internal city staff to find out what projects are coming up in the next 3 years. So I'll be sharing more information with you over the next couple of days about that opportunity for comments. I've been working with our project team on that as well. So we're in sort of the first phase. I'll also be sending an opportunity to specific affected parties in the field of accessibility to offer some one-on-one consultation with them as well. And lastly, in terms of the work plan, coming up at the next meeting in September after our summer break, we'll have presentations from Facilities Management and Construction Services, their annual update, as well as Human Resources and Organizational Development. We'll be providing an update on their work in the accessibility field. And we will have the working group reports coming as well. And lastly, I'll take an opportunity, Colin mentioned it earlier, but Colin and our own chair, Andrew, did a really great podcast as part of the city's monthly podcast, talking about accessibility and the multi-year accessibility plan. I think covering on areas of accessibility that aren't so obvious. Built environment, I know, is one people often think of at first, but dealing with the arts and culture service. So I think if you have a chance to listen to it and share it out with your networks, it's a good listen. And I'd like to thank Andrew for volunteering. And with that, I will answer any questions or take any comments on the report.
Thank you for that, Derek. I will mention doing that podcast was a lot of fun, actually. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, please take a listen to it, share it with your networks. But yes, so there are any questions, comments for Derek regarding that report. Janice, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Andrew. Derek, just a quick question. I was lucky enough to observe one of the Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility audits at the Kingston East. No, not Kingston East, Rideau Heights, pardon me. And I was just curious, it seemed like these scores are great. I was wondering if we advertise those scores or if they are at all accessible to the public on the sites for both of those community centers. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment, Janice. And no, I don't believe they are promoted anywhere, but I think that's a fantastic idea. And it sort of ties into something I'm going to talk about in the working group report. So I'm going to make note of that and I'll talk with our facility staff and we can get that shared out there. And I think Janet may have some knowledge that I'm not aware of in our transition. So perhaps I can let her jump in there.
Sure, Derek's correct. I mean, we haven't undertaken a lot of engagement to advertise that out to the community, but it is excuse me, it is publicly available on the Rick Hansen Foundation website. So that website does has a list of all facilities across Canada that have undergone an audit and what their the rating they received was. So it is out there in the public realm. It's not confidential, but we haven't been promoting it.
Thank you. I think it's a great thing to promote because I know city staff have worked really hard to get those high scores. So I think you guys should be applauded, and the city should know how hard you guys work at getting those scores really high. So yeah, it might be something to consider. Thank you.
It's not often we get a chance to pat ourselves on the back as city employees. So I think we'll take that opportunity, Janice.
Excellent. Yeah, Derek, you just took the words right out of my mouth. That yeah, it's a great idea, Janice, and I hope the city takes that opportunity. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on to item C, which is again the report that Colin and Jennifer gave us regarding the arts and culture and heritage services. Again, last chance, any other questions or comments about that? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Thank you once again, Colin and Jennifer, for that. Moving on to item D, the municipal election accessibility report. Janet, go ahead, please.
Okay, hi everybody. So as Derek mentioned earlier, we've had a bit of a shuffle of roles in the clerk's department. So I'm here today in my capacity as the assistant returning officer for the City of Kingston's 2022 municipal elections. The Municipal Elections Act does require that the clerk shall have regard to the needs of the electors and candidates with disabilities and shall prepare a plan for the identification, removal, and prevention of barriers that affect electors and candidates with disabilities. So I'm pleased to be here today to share with you the accessibility considerations that we have planned for the 2022 municipal elections and to receive your feedback and comments. So I'd like to start first with communications and candidate information. The city's website will be the main resource for information for electors and candidates. Our website is WCAG 2.0 AA compliant. Any PDF documents that we do need to post will be remediated for use by screen readers before being posted to the website. And staff are planning to use a technology called a candidates access portal, which will provide candidates with self-service access to documents as well as to the voters list. In terms of the physical voting places, we have put together a MAC project team that will be undertaking site visits at the proposed voting locations. I believe those start tomorrow, June 3rd. The facilities will be reviewed for accessibility, both from the point of view of an elector and an elections worker. We will be having 5 days of advanced voting. And during that time, during the advanced voting period, electors can vote at any one of the locations across the city, and there will be 6 locations. So regardless of where you live in the city, you can go to any of those 6 locations on those 5 days. On voting day itself, which is Monday, October 24th, there will be 13 locations. There'll be 1 location in each district, except for Countryside because of its sort of geographic size, and there will be 2 voting places in that district. And on voting day, electors will need to vote in their geographic district. The voting places are going to be laid out to allow for physical distancing. They'll have signage to indicate traffic flows, and where possible, there will be designated entry and exit points. The voting compartments have been designed and will include lamps and magnifiers, and chairs will be available for those who might need to sit. And as in all our previous elections, all voting places will be equipped with accessible voting equipment. We're also going to be offering, in addition to physical in-person voting, internet voting. That's something that we've done for the past couple of elections. We will be extending the time for internet voting this year. So it will be available from October 5th, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning until the close of polls on October 24th, which is 8 p.m. So that's 20 days of internet voting. Again, the voting system is WCAG 2.1 AA compliant, and it is compatible for use by screen magnifiers or screen readers. Excuse me. We've also looked into transportation. We've ensured that voting places on voting days will be located on a bus route or within 400 meters of a bus stop, except for voting places in countryside, because of course there isn't public transit in that district. Kingston Transit will be providing free transportation on all voting days to riders who show their voter identification notice, and Kingston Access Bus will provide free transportation to voting places for registered users. So it is very important that electors do their due diligence, check their information on the voters list, make sure that you're there, make sure that it's accurate so that you get your voter information notice, because that will be what enables you to either access the free transit if that's your choice, or will allow you to vote by internet. So it just gives you all the options. A voter information notice isn't required to vote, but it will streamline things for yourself and for everybody else. And finally, in terms of staff training, all of our staff who are hired to work at voting places, and there will be a mix of city staff people working at voting places, as well as public members hired to work at those voting places, they will all be trained in the provision of accessible customer service. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
There we go. Sorry. I think I mentioned before I have 3 computers on my desk and I'm losing track of what mouse does what. So finally found the unmute. So yes, so are there any questions or comments for Janet? Corey, I see a hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say that I really appreciate the online voting being introduced that is not available for the provincial vote. And I think that goes a long way to helping a lot of people that, can't stand in line for long periods of time. And sometimes the chairs are not available and things like that. So I think the online version is a really good step forward.
Thank you, Corey, for that. Again, Corey took the words out of my mouth. I'm very happy to see that the online voting again. I wish it was available for this provincial election right now. It is a very handy thing for a lot of people in our community. So glad to see that the city is moving in that direction again. It's very worthwhile and a necessary project and feature to have. Is there any other questions out there? Kate, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
For people that want to vote online but maybe aren't as tech savvy, is there any resources in place to walk them through it if they need it?
Thanks for the question, Kate. So we will have an internet voting help desk. There are sort of high-level instructions on the voter information notice. It is a two-step process for security. So first, an elector needs to have that voter information notice, and it will have a code on it that needs to be entered as well as the elector's date of birth. That will allow the elector to get registered. Then they will receive an email and then they can vote. But like I say, we will have a help desk. So if somebody has registered but they're not finding that email and maybe it's just gone to their spam folder or their junk folder, we'll be able to help with that. If there's more technological issues, then yes, we will be able to help with that as well. We don't have sort of iPads or computers that are available for people to come in and use, because there is that 2-level piece, and so people would have to access their personal email on a public computer, and that can have issues. So that's why we don't offer that service, and it's trying to find that balance between maintaining the security of the vote by using a two-step system. But we do have the center, the call center, where people can call in for help, and it will be open. We haven't completely determined the hours yet, but it's not going to be open just sort of like 9 to 5. There will be after hours, extended hours as well. So if somebody's not available sort of during traditional business hours, they will be able to call later on in the evening as well.
That's great. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Great question, Kate. Is there any other questions out there? Okay, seeing none and hearing none, we will move on to item 7E, working group reports. Starting off with the Awareness and Education Working Group. Derek, I think you're back up.
I am, third and final time today. So thank you, everybody. I'll give a quick overview of the work of the working group. In Q1, the multi-year work plan was approved. Some of the major features of this are that there will be projects coming forward regarding promotion and education around regulations for service animals, continuing to work on providing accessibility, education, and awareness to the business community in Kingston, as well as another key area of focus will be accessible employment and what can be done to further awareness and education in that area. So it's part of the next 2 years. The working group will work with staff on formulating some more specifics, but the first specific item that is being worked on now is an accessibility mapping tool. So it's currently in background development, but there is an interactive mapping tool that can be available through the city website that details city facilities such as recreation centers or parks in a map-based format that also provides information on the accessibility features of that location. This can include things such as accessible washrooms, ramps, pathways, and other accessibility features. So we have a sort of a beta version of this available, and we're working on doing some more testing, and the working group will be helping refine new features or other features that should be included, as well as other facility locations. The map also has the ability to include pictures as well. So it's a good opportunity for people who might be interested in accessing a city facility, either for a specific program or going to a city park, to see in advance what the accessibility features are, and if there's any barriers that may prevent them from using the facility to its fullest. There's also going to be a plain text version of this created as well for the website, understanding that the interactive mapping tool may not be 100% workable with screen readers. And the other aspect that the working group will be working on soon is the Celebrating Accessibility Awards, which happens each December. It may only be June, but it's time to start thinking of the awards. And I would just put the idea out to the committee of, if you know of any businesses, individuals, or community groups that you think would be a worthy recipient, kind of catalog that in the back of your mind, because we will be looking for nominations starting later in the summer. And with that, happy to take any comments or answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Derek. Yeah, any questions, comments out there? Hey, Chantal, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like the online interactive map idea. Again, like when it comes to accessibility, it always just goes back to my mom and all of the really difficult barriers that she had to overcome. I think it's brilliant, and I think it's going to be really good for people in the city who have accessibility needs.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Is there any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. The Built Environment Working Group. David, I know you just got back in the saddle, and by the way, wonderful to see you.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be seen and heard, I'll tell you. So I've been a bit out of commission, but the working group has been busy mostly with briefings and reviewing of standards. We went through some of the bylaw changes that are happening with the new big city bylaw review, which I understand. I haven't been keeping up, but I presume it was passed by council. I'm not absolutely sure on that. It was scheduled to be anyway. But we met with the Chief Disability and Inclusion Officer for CNIB to go over some of our projects that involved some accessibility features around vision and sort of perceptions of space. And that was really helpful. And I understand we had arranged anyway when I was away, but we'd arranged for Mia Riddell, former member of MAP, to come and talk about deaf space in the May meeting, I guess it was. So we're doing that kind of thing, and this coming month, I think we're scheduled for another planning review of the accessibility checklist that we use for our site plans. And just going back through my emails, the gang has been pretty busy with site plans too, from what I can see. But I'm back and on the go and building up steam. I'll take a break in the summer, of course, but I'm back in September. Aside from site plans through the summer, we have our next environment meeting. It's wrong in this report. I'm not sure where my head was there, but it's Thursday, June 16th, 10 o'clock video conference. So I think that's all. If I've missed anything, the other members can fill you guys in. But I think, yeah, we've been going through a bunch of our material and getting feedback from the projects. And I'm happy to see the report from the Kingston East Community Center. As Janice said, she was involved in the Rideau Heights one. I was involved in the accessibility audit for Rick Hansen for the Kingston East. Happy to see they got great ratings, and I also agree it should be highly promoted. I think we deserve that. And on the background, we're set behind the scenes. The citizens of this community don't see. So thank you. Any comments? I'm happy to see what I can answer.
Thank you very much, David. Yeah, is there any questions for David? Great, seeing none, hearing none. Thank you very much, David. Can I get a mover and a seconder to motion to receive and accept those reports for the committee? I see Penny, I see Chantel. All those in favor? Great, that passes. Thank you very much, everyone. Now moving on to the appointments to project teams. The first one I see is the cricket field baseball renovation. I believe we already have 2 volunteers that need to be confirmed. So thank you, William and Janice, for that. So I'll do a motion and at the end for all of them. But moving on to the 2022 municipal election accessibility. We have one volunteer in Amy. We're looking for one more. So would anyone out there like to join Amy on this team? Penny, I see your hand up. Thank you very much, Penny.
Can I just
yeah. Sure.
comment out on it, Andrew?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm allowed. Just that we are doing the site visits tomorrow with Derek, so I don't know if he wants to comment, if somebody else can join us, but we're starting quite early tomorrow to do all of the site visits for the day.
So thanks for that, Amy and Andrew. There's going to be other aspects of the project as well. So who is volunteering for this, Penny? You would not be required to attend tomorrow, but there is going to be some other aspects in testing, voting equipment, and the website and things like that. So you would be asked to be involved with that, and I'll give you a lot more notice for timing on that than less than 24 hours. So good point though, Amy. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, thank you very much, Amy, for that. Okay, so moving on to the next project. I believe there's 3 parks playground replacements for Compton, Garrigan, and Roden Park. We're looking for 2 volunteers. Would anybody like to volunteer for those projects? I would say that doing playgrounds is I've done quite a few in the past. It's a great learning opportunity for new members to get to talk to the planners about equipment and get a real sense of parks and playgrounds and what goes into them. So again, looking for 2 volunteers for those.
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Just as you're introducing each of these, if you could just describe what is involved in volunteering, because I'm just thinking of my schedule and also the nature of my disability. It limits how much output I have. So it would be nice to know what I'm volunteering for exactly.
Okay. I can scroll down to the description of it.
Andrew, if it's helpful, I've spoken with the project managers for those, so I can give a bit of an overview for the parks ones for this one, if that's helpful.
Sure, please go ahead, Derek.
No problem. So the work on this it's typically spread out over, I'd say, 1 to 2 years, and it starts with sort of an initial consultation and public meeting, sort of with a visioning of the work that's going to happen. And then it moves into a design phase and then a final execution phase. So you're looking at work spread out over a fairly lengthy period of time. And the staff that work on these are very knowledgeable in terms of accessibility. So it's a lot of review of things, but they are getting quite a bit of the information down. So as Andrew said, it'd be good if there was a partnership between a person who's done some of these before and maybe somebody who's new, but don't hesitate to volunteer for them. Hopefully that gives you some more information, Chantel.
Yes, it does. The one thing that, again, because of the nature of my disability, I have to be the most concerned with is how much time, say, per week or per month I'd be expecting.
Oh, Andrew?
The ones I've done in the past have been very minimal. I've spent maybe 2 hours total in a year for a park. And that's just going over a plan with the planner, asking questions, seeing what's involved. And sometimes there's a site visit, but the last 2 years, I've been able to do that virtually. The planner has actually gone to the site with their phone with Zoom and go over everything. So I haven't had to leave the house, but you can, of course, now, if there is a site visit required, you could go in person to see that as well. But I think genie's out of the bottle on that one too. So I would say very, very minimal.
Well, that sounds like something I'd be able to handle, so I'm willing to volunteer for that. Thank you for taking the time to explain it.
More than welcome. Thank you for that, Chantel. Was there any, Corey, I see your hand up. Would you like to join as well?
Yeah, I live in the West End, so I could volunteer for the Cataract Way West Community Park trails, if that's helpful.
Okay. Right, so that, yeah, the next one. Would anybody else like to join Chantel for the counterpart? Janice, see your hand up. You good for that one? Thumbs up. Great, thank you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute button. Yes, I
Right.
would. I am willing to join Chantel. Thank you.
We accept thumbs up, so we're good. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. The next one, as Corey said, is the development of the Cataract Way West Community Park and master plan for new trails. Corey has volunteered, looking for one more. I think Amy, good for you. Thank you very much. So that was done. Now on the addendum, another one was added, the Terra Verde Park, which I believe is on Centennial Drive, close to, I want to say, the Waterford Retirement Community. It's there. Looking for one appointment. Derek, no, sorry, I thought I saw a hand. Looking for one appointment. Does anyone volunteer for that one? Kate. Awesome. Thank you very much. The hand and the thumb. I like it. Thank you, everyone. Looking to confirm all those appointments. So can I get a mover and a seconder to confirm those appointments to those various projects? Glenn, I see your hand. Janice, as a seconder, all in favor? Excellent. That passes. Thank you very much, everyone. So moving on to, sorry, Amy, I see a hand up.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask this. I just noticed, because I know we were trying to do 2 people per project team. Is there a reason why they only wanted 1 volunteer for Terra Verde? Derek?
I can answer that one, Andrew. I believe it's a very small and limited time project. So whoever has, I can't remember who volunteered for that, Kate. I think they're looking at doing their first consultation in the second last week of June. So it'll be a pretty quick project. That's why.
Great, thank you for that clarification and question. So moving on to item number 8, motions. Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 9, notices of motion. Seeing none, once again, moving on to other business. Does anyone have anything they would like to add? See none and hear none. Moving on to number 11, correspondence. Again, see none. We're moving along, folks. Item 12, date of next meeting. Already, we're looking to September 1st. Janice, I see a hand up. Do you have a question?
I would just like to perhaps suggest that that maybe this has been considered, but because that is the last week of the summer, it may be difficult to get quorum on that day. I know for sure I will still be away that last week before Labor Day, and I just thought maybe we should consider now to move that date, but just a suggestion. Perhaps we can't because it's always the first Thursday in the month. Derek, go ahead.
Derek.
I guess that's a question for you.
No, no worries. I'm just thinking that's a very good point to bring up, Janice. What we can do is follow up. I can ask Ian, the new clerk, to follow up with everybody after the meeting just to see if there's a preferred time, and also to try and balance it with there may be other city meetings. So say moving it to the week after may not work for staff, but Ian can follow up with everybody and we'll try and find a better meeting time for the September meeting.
I will certainly do that. I'll take some time this afternoon to just check to make sure what the first 2 weeks of September look like, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Can I have a mover and a seconder? I see Amy. I see Chantel. All those in favor? Excellent. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I guess we'll have a great summer, and we'll see you at some point in September. But yeah, working groups, we're still going to be meeting and working. So look forward to seeing a few people on and off this summer. So